It's the Smucker's Uncrustables podcast with your host, Uncrustables.
Okay, today's guest is rough around the edges. Please welcome Crust.
Thanks for having me.
Today's topic, he's round with soft pillowy bread.
Hey.
Filled with delicious PB&J.
Are you talking about yourself?
And you can take him anywhere.
Why'd you invite?
And we are out of time.
Are you really cutting me off?
Uncrustables are the best part of the sandwich. Sorry, Crust.
Are you a forward thinker? Then you need an HR and finance platform that thinks like you do. Workday is the AI platform that helps propel your organization, your workforce, and your industry into the future. Workday, moving business forever forward.
Hey there, welcome to Why We Roll, a tabletop role-playing game design podcast.
We're your hosts, Chris Pickett, creator of the historical fantasy game Dance Macabre, and Wythe Marshall, creator of the political sci-fi game Stillfleet.
Throughout the show, Chris and Wythe hope to amplify new creative voices. We'll chat with different TTRPG designers, focusing on the world of indie games.
We take a curious approach to game design, working through a range of mechanical and narrative questions that are pertinent to many designers, players, and GMs.
We hope to showcase fresh and even challenging ideas about what makes imagination-based games just so powerful.
Okay, let's find out why we roll.
Well, Luke, hey, what's up?
What's going on? Hey, we're live.
We're live.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
We can cut all that, right, Chris, for the podcast?
No, that's gonna stay in for sure.
Call that a cold open.
Yeah, it's a cold open.
Sure.
It's very cinematic.
In media res.
Yeah. Very nice. Well, yeah. For those listening, welcome back to Why We Roll. I'm Chris Pickett. We're joined here with Wythe Marshall, as always. And today we have special guest Luke Gearing with us.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me on, first of all. That's nice to be invited.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, no, well, thanks for making time. I'm sure you're busy, we're all busy, but, you know, we're fans of your work. And in terms of game design, definitely we're like, ooh, will Luke Gearing, respond to us? Presumably you didn't know us. So we appreciate, the cold email working. But yeah, we're here to just really chat generally. It sounds like, as you said by email, you're always working on something. So we can talk about what you're working on currently, but we thought maybe we'd also just ask about some sort of bangers, some greatest hits, and your general sort of philosophy as a designer and writer. And, we always kind of are interested in how people develop what they develop. So, how do you get started? Do you play test? I mean, these are kind of through lines that it's been really fun to see sort of different designers answer.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Chris has a million other questions. But.
Yeah, but before we jump into that, for folks who don't know you or don't know your work, Luke, could you give us a quick introduction?
So I'm Luke, as previously mentioned. So mostly I write a lot of adventures for various different systems. So like the big one is probably the big Mothership release, Gradient Descent, with work on a Panda Flash as well. There's the Mortborg one that just came out. There's a bunch of stuff for Troika. There's the Swivers rulebook, that's another systems. And Wolves Upon the Coast, which is a system and a big old hex crawl that's kind of all bundled up together. There's a lot now. I've been doing it for about 10 years or so, and still kicking along, which is good.
And are you full time, Luke? Or if you don't mind our asking if that's not prying.
I am now. So up until January of this year, I wasn't. I used to do cybersecurity as a day job. And then Sean McCoy from Tuesday Night Games, Mothership, and all that was like, "Hey, do you want to do this full time for me?" And I was like, "Yes, absolutely, please." So that's what I've been mostly working on this year, is working on Mothership stuff. That's kind of the main thing now, because full time for Tuesday Night Games.
You're
good. Really, really
you're
good.
now a lead writer for Tuesday Night Games. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Nice. Which is very fun.
Yeah, congrats on that. That's huge, and also just anyone making it sort of full time, being able to write creative game stuff can be difficult. So we really appreciate, good writers in a way, like, getting rewarded with that. How is that? How do you like?
Well, it's fantastic. Yeah,
that's the goal, I'm guessing.
No, it's definitely, because like it'd been a case where I was like sort of weighing up when can I try and make the jump from doing it sort of part time,
right,
and like stealing time from work to doing it as a full time job, and that's obviously a lot harder to manage being self employed. So having it being done this way is perfect because I kind of get the stability and I get to do something I actually care about, which is lovely.
Yeah, kind of best of both worlds in the way.
Yeah, for sure, exactly.
Yeah, amazing.
So maybe we can go back to the beginning, if that's something you can recall. Pre-COVID, 10 years ago. How did you get into? I guess maybe actually it's worth asking too. Like, how'd you get into games in general?
Yeah.
What were you playing, and how did you get into the writing side, the creation side? This is something again, Chris and I kind of ask everybody, and we've talked about ourselves.
Yeah.
And there's interesting through lines, and some people have really different stories. But I'm curious, how you went from presumably somebody who likes games, plays games, to doing it full time for a relatively big, game.
Yeah, so like ancient history is that I'm like second generation nerd basically because my parents met doing like World War II reenactment stuff, and they did like a sci-fi like live action thing as well.
Whoa!
But my dad was like involved with some of like the first people outside. He reckons the first people outside of university playing D&D. It's like an old school war gamer. So I sort of obviously grew up around it. Like they used to use me as a prop for these science fiction games. So as I always say, I never had a fucking chance. So from there, we had like Baldur's Gate 1 on PC, and that's why I learned to read. Because before that, I couldn't be bothered. And my parents were like, "Oh, you keep asking us to read this dialogue. Like, learn to read it yourself, for Christ's sake." So I was like, "Fine, I will." And then like fell into reading a big way. Then D&D, I got I think it was Dragon Quest. It was one of the really old like, box sets they did as an intro to BX, and I got that from I think it was like a jumble sale at Boy Scouts. And then from there, like found all my dad's RPG stuff, talking to him about it. Did it a little bit when I was younger, and then around college time got like properly into it, running 3.5, unfortunately. One thing 3.5 is good for teaching you is that you can just change it, because game designers don't know any better. You can make it better. It's fine. So I was doing that for a bit. And I'm still sort of, they're like my primary friend group, the people I met at college. That's like pre-university in the UK. I don't know, like I see the term used for a lot of different things. Then from there, an old friend from secondary school sent me Patrick Stewart's blog, and I was like, damn, this is sick as fuck. This is like, you can do cool things and you don't need to worry about rules. Holy shit.
Which book are we talking about here?
Oh, he sent me the blog. He sent me the blog.
Sorry.
Wait,
pre-book.
I'm sorry. We're talking. Is this Sir Patrick Stewart or is
no? This is like
it's an OSR.
Okay.
OSR designer.
I should have known that. But Star Trek: Next Generation is always first in my mind.
That's fair.
I was like, wait, hold on.
It's also spelled differently, but I always have that thought every time I open Veins of the Earth, which is actually fairly often still. I always think like, I picture Luke Picard like sitting down to like talk about Darrow and these horrible monsters. Yeah.
You need to make a dexterity check. Make it so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the blogosphere, I mean, many of us, like encounter these blogs and we're like, oh, this is really, really cool. Like people are just writing cool stuff, tables, whatever. Yeah. Got it.
Yeah. So like and then from there, like, I was like, well, I can do that, but I can do that. I can do that. From there, I can't even remember how it's I think it was Daniel Stell was doing the Undercross plan. I think it's the zine, sorry. I always have arguments with people about this one. So it was looking for submission. I was started running Call of Cthulhu at that point, again for the same group of friends, and there was like a monster that they thought was really sick. And I wrote it up formally, as it were, and like sent it over to Daniel, like, oh hey, like, do you want this? And he was like, oh fuck yeah, let's go, this is great. And then from there I was like kind of just doing small bits for the Undercroft scene. Never thought like, oh, I'll do a book. And this was around sort of university time. And I was smoking quite a lot of the time, and I ran out of money. So I was like, "Fuck! I need to write something and send it for cigarette money," which is why I wrote Fever Swamp. And he was like, "Oh, this is too big to be like one issue. So like, we'll do a book." And I was like, "Oh, fuck, all right, we'll do a book." And then they got an Henny, and it kind of all went downhill from there, as it were, because of smoking. So thanks.
Sometimes good things do come from smoking cigarettes.
Yeah, who knew, right?
Some of my closest friends, you know.
It works. I mean, nobody should start smoking on the back of that, but yeah.
No, don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been something else, right? It could have, I mean, we all probably need money, so it could have been like any, not cigarettes specifically, that just happened to be the top of mind like thing I'm spending money on. But so that's cool. So it wasn't like you set out initially to write full time necessarily, but you wrote one thing you liked, and there were people who obviously liked it, which is great.
Yeah.
And that's obviously a nice sort of stepping stone and a feeling of confidence that people reacted well to that. How did you go about like kind of the writing process? Like, how did you come into sort of professionalize as a writer, if that makes any sense? Like, did you study what other people are doing? I don't know, like what's your process, you know?
So Fever Swamp was like pretty naively written because I wasn't like super well read in terms of like adventure structures, which is why there's some weird shit in there, like the hexes are too big, and I mean people respond well to it, but it's like it's definitely not the same as a lot of other works. But after that, it just became a case of like immersing myself in games, both kind of the adventure side and the systemic side, as well as like running a lot. I think that's like really important, like because it's all very well and good to have like something that looks sick, like on paper, and then in play it just falls apart and doesn't work. So yeah, I think for me anyway, it comes a lot of it is having played a lot and having played a lot of different styles of game, but with the same people, so you kind of have like a control aspect there where it's like I know I can see the effect of these on these players anyway because it's always the same players rather than it all being kind of like, well, I don't know what to pinpoint the success or failure on here. Like obviously something's going to work better for my players than other people's, but at least I know who I'm pitching at and I know what they're into, so it's like, okay, this does work for whatever reason, this doesn't work for whatever reason, but at least I'm not just like, oh, maybe the players were better or whatever. But I think like for me, like everything is downstream from running like really long campaigns with like good friends over a long period of time, because it just gives you a wealth of experience to draw on, and it means that you kind of intuitively build up a sense of what will and won't work, because it's like, well, I've done something similar and that didn't work, so like why didn't it work? And I can start to build that way, or the other way around where it's like, okay, look, I've definitely done this before and I know it works, so cool, I can just like kind of go for it. And
do you find that the players give you ideas as well? Like they're kind of part of the authorial process? Not that it's not your primarily, authorial intent, you're designing the scenarios, but you're getting kind of ideas.
Oh, definitely. I mean, like, for me, like, the people at the table are the most important thing. Like, the book can think what it wants to think if you're running, like, a pre-published module or whatever, but, like, ultimately, it's up to, like, the players, including the GM, but kind of everyone on equal footing at the table. And so, like, there's an interesting tension where I know, certainly in, like, some kind of, like, gaming spheres, it's very on brand, like, I'll give, like, the players some of the authorial control, which, like, that I'm personally less into, because I think it can, if you overdo it, it kind of cheapens the, like, feeling of reality in the game world. For me, and for my players, obviously, like, if other players really respond to it, and they love the idea of, like, this plastic reality, whereas for me, I kind of like a concrete reality that then the players are finding their own route through. And I'm not dictating that, but everything that is like fact stays as fact, almost. But equally, the concreteness of that isn't actually particularly concrete in a lot of areas. So the players are like being like, oh, what about this? What about that? Like, what if these are two things are connected? You're like, oh, that's a good idea. I know if there was anything there, but now there totally is. So there definitely is like a give and take there, I think, with a big campaign. On top of all the kind of moving parts and like the idea of like the world reacting to what the players are doing as well. Even stuff they're not directly bumping up against, like kind of the effect of the ripples they cause just by traversing the world is like a thing that I'm really into and I really enjoy. Where it's like, so I've seen like people have said like a lot of Luke's adventures have like a static situation, which I think is like can be true. Where it's not so much static as like it's held in tension. The idea is being that when the players come in, they're the stabilizing force that makes the whole thing fly apart and all the tension is released. It's like a big like, oh, like now everyone's fucking fighting because you fucked up, or everyone's trying to get you on the side so that they get an edge, or whatever it is. It's the players' characters who are creating the dynamism, because that A makes it more comprehensible to them, but B, it just means you can set up like really high stakes and can build the tension over several sessions. Or like, so say like there's about to be a big fight, they can see like soldiers building up on either side or whatever, and then it's like the players are the ones instigating the cool thing rather than the cool thing happening before they even get there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm curious, what are some ways that you've systematized or mechanicalized those ripples, as you put it, like kind of like higher level faction rules, kind of filtering down into player level action or perceivable action, things like that? Because you've written across several different systems. So I'm curious how you implement that in your modules.
So, like, the big thing for me, the big tweet that went around recently that I did, like, the super secret technique is just write down what happens each campaign session, and just look back at those notes occasionally. Like, it feels a little bit like make work, but when you can be like, oh, wait, like 5 sessions ago, I didn't remember, but my notebook remembers that you met these dudes, and you pissed them off, and they're going to report them into their boss, and that kind of comes up and comes back down, and now there's the consequence. So for me, a lot of it is about making that, because the mechanisms are really useful as a way of either offloading work, like this is too complicated, I don't want to think about it, or it's I don't care, I don't want to think about it, right? It's the whole kind of like mechanics as abstraction, or like rules allied, however you want to put it. So sometimes I think you don't necessarily want to overly mechanize it, you just want to have a way of recording that information. Whether that be like, oh, there's like a big table and I can roll on that for consequences. I think faction turns for like bigger scale stuff can be really useful. It's like once a game month, you just like assign them a chance for progressing their goals, and you don't worry too much about the specifics of how they've done it, because you kind of, it's like the whole kind of creativity thing where like, okay, so I know that they've advanced it, I don't know how, but here's what the players are doing. The tension between those two things, I might be able to find something that links them together. Or not. Maybe it's entirely unrelated and there's something going on that the players just haven't touched. I think that's really interesting as well, is like not coming in at the beginning of the plan, but like, oh shit, they're like 90% of the way through their evil plan and we need to do something and we didn't know about it. That's cool. That's like fun. Especially if like they had the chance and they were like, we'll go do other stuff. No worries. Like I've had my lunchtime like mega dungeon campaign that I run. They're like agree, because like it's very negotiating with other factions in the dungeon and stuff, and because they've taken on jobs from everyone, they won't be able to do a lot of these in a timely manner. So that's caused like this mummy who wanted them to kill some necromancers ended up taking over their allies, the kobolds, and like leading them in like a big war against the players, and that was like super fun. It was just purely by the players not doing anything is what caused that consequence, and that is just like rolling for each of them, like how are they advancing their plan, and there's kind of like a delay timer, like, oh, he's not doing anything for the next X number of weeks because the players are supposedly handling it. When it's just like several months, if they haven't, it's like, okay, what's next? So yeah, a lot of it is just write it down and just building that kind of GM instinctive memory of being like, okay, I need to go and see if any of these factions are advancing or anything.
Yeah, no, I like that. You've done a number of different kinds of books, and so if you jump out to me, and they're not all adventures. So some are adventures, like the Isle definitely jumps out as like an adventure. So maybe we could talk about that. But also, like I really like acid death fantasy and just these kind of settings that are and the one I forget the name off without opening the PDF, but it's very memorable for Troika. That's kind of World War I, but like Eldritch. So it's sort of like
the Weird War one.
Yeah, it's the Weird War. Exactly. And that feels so those feel very different, right? The Isle, and there's books that feel very narrative and very driven by player agency. And then there's situations where they're just like wild settings. And those they're all really fun and they're all well written, but they almost feel like, you've kind of been working on a couple different sort of genres of whether you call it adventure or setting book. So I maybe really the question is just like what happened after Fever Swamp? Like where did you kind of go next with your sort of exploration of the genre, and as you're reading more and writing more, and what led to some of those sort of the pre-mothership or your non-mothership bangers? Because Gradient Descent I think is like a whole nother beast again, right? So that's like maybe the next question, but
so like there's definitely Troika is an interesting game because I think it had like a big third-party scene, which is great. And the big thing people gravitated to was doing backgrounds, and like there's a lot of like very different ones, and a lot of people will like kind of just come up with stuff that's like cool or funny. Like there's someone with a book with like, oh, you can play a sentient truck, very funny, very cool. So I wanted to play with the Troika because like so ADF, it's like an experiment in how stripped down could presenting a world get. So it's like, what if all we have is the characters and the monsters? So I think a lot of people critique it, like, well, where's the adventure? And it's like, it's right, like, you've got everything in the world in front of you. Like, you can just, like, I even did, like, a live demo. I was like, okay, roll up 3 monsters, combine them into a scenario, there's the adventure. Like, you have all the tools that you need. So, yeah, the idea there is presenting a world as minimally as possible, using only stuff that's, like, directly usable. Like, I don't want to tell you anything. Everything's being, like, shown to you is the idea. Like, you know, there's nothing at the front saying, and here's where the tortoise nomads are. But, like, there's a guy who rode around on a tortoise that's now dead. And it's like, okay, that's information. Like, if you read all of the backgrounds and you read all the monsters, you know what the setting is and what's there and what's possible. And then Weird War was, so for whatever reason, the Troika, like, third-party community, and just from what I've heard, a lot of people, it's very, like, whimsical. And I basically wanted, like, what if you make Troika really unpleasant and nasty? So again, that's an experiment in, like, presenting something as minimally as possible. So it's like, here's the backgrounds and kind of building out the setting. Because one thing I try to avoid having too many, like, big picture ideas when I start working on something. I'll have, like, a very, like, vague, fuzzy outline of, like, over there on the horizon, this is where I'm trying to get to roughly. But, like, I'm trying to discover it as I'm building it up. So, like, each background in, like, Weird War is building only on the stuff that exists before. And I'm kind of discovering it in the process of writing it. And then I can go back, refine, clean up, add connections. But there's definitely not like a... It's more of a discovered thing than a designed thing for me, often with something like that. And with Weird War, I think it neglects even to have enemies in it. I think it's just got, like, the background, and it's got the...
it's got the psychogeography, this sort of like level of reality. Like how loose is reality due to this? It feels a little like Annihilation or Stalker or Zona. It's kind of that vibe.
Yeah, definitely.
But transposed into Britain, World War One or World War Two, World War One feeling.
World War One, yeah.
But I think those are so successful to me coming from SF that they, like Weird War and Acid Death Fantasy, both treat the trope seriously in a way that I feel like, besides the fact that I actually don't enjoy playing Troika as a system, but I love Troika books. I think they're often really well written and really fun. They're well designed. The art's good. Yeah. But I think those are fun. Those are some of the best that I've seen because they take the setting more seriously and they kind of walk through it. And it's the what if actually plays out. Whereas I think Troika, even from the core books on, tend to not do that, and they don't take themselves seriously. So it feels hard as a GM or player to like literally know like where we are in time and space, or like take ourselves seriously. Whereas from page 1 of Weird War, it's like you're in that setting, and with minimal art, as you say, with minimal direction in terms of narrative, you get a real strong sense of the kind of place you are, the kind of person you are at the front lines of this, as you know, the title says it all, right? Weird War. Yeah. So I think there's something successful to that, maybe exploratory, but also sort of as you like kind of paying off one idea with the next in a not humorless, but just serious way. Like what happens if you're that guy on the front lines of this impossible conflict, you know?
Yeah. Like I think like there's definitely jokes in there, and that's part of just, I think part of that because backgrounds are kind of like jokes, like the way the like it's like I think my mate Jared said it's like a joke, like set up punchline, and the punchline might be the special, the equipment, the skills, but there's always like a 1-2 with like a successful one. And except sometimes, obviously, once you've established that in the joke, you break it and play something straight. Yeah, I think the idea of just trying to take the work seriously is one. Cause I think because like at the end of the day, it's fucking elf games, right? Like we're playing pretend with dice. It's very easy to want that ironic distance to make it feel a bit safer. And I totally get why, but also I think something really interesting happens when you try and disavow that irony and be like, no, we're going to take it seriously and we're going to try and it doesn't need to be po-faced, it doesn't need to be miserable. It just needs to be like just do the thing properly, almost.
Yeah, or just
I almost feel like the irony is built in also at the level of the Dragon game on. You don't need to add the irony. Like, it's there.
Yeah.
What you're adding is always going to be there no matter how seriously you take yourselves. The players are like, pass the Doritos, I'm going to min-max, let's fight space goblins. And you're like, no, guys, I built it. You know what I mean? So it's like...
you don't want to be like, no, you have to come to my level to it. You don't have to...
Right.
There's the stereotype of the GM is like, you guys aren't taking it seriously enough.
Right.
Like,
It's
you
also
don't want to be that
trick
guy.
them into that by offering something really good, which I think, again, you do in different ways, right? Whether it's setting or narrative. And Chris, I'm sorry, I think you were going to say something. I cut you off there.
I think I was going to say, just taking the setting seriously, and also just like giving primacy to the world that you're in, so that like players can actually ground themselves in it. Like, I know when Wythe and I have played Troika before, and when I've played Troika outside of that game, that's always been my biggest issue. I can't ground myself in the story of what's happening, which is why with Fever Swamp, Acid Death Fantasy, those books, like I agree with Wythe. You open the book, you're in it. You're in the setting. I really appreciate that because it gives you something to actually latch onto and actually roleplay with, as opposed to like just kind of anything goes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's like the idea of trying to take be really concrete and really solid in like, because at the end of the day, like, I'm using a published book, it needs to do something for me that either I can't do myself or saves me a lot of work and a lot of time. And I think one of those things is like provide all those concrete details and be like really not necessarily intricately put together, but everything needs to be there in some way, even though it's not directly there, even though it's only there through inference, it should be there. Because otherwise, why am I running an adventure? Like, if it's not as good as something I could come up with on the fly, or it's lacking those details I have to do. I mean, like, it's tough again, because it's, as with many things in RPG writing, there's like tension between two things, because like, it needs to not be shit and boring to read, but also I need those boring details in there sometimes. And it's the same way, like, do all the work for me, but if you do too much work for me, then it becomes, like, what am I doing? Then I'm like a robo-GM, in some ways. Like, I really like Carcosa, which has, like, nothing. It gives you almost nothing. It's just, like, there's 367 jungle ants here. That's an amazing hex fill, because, like, how do you encounter 367 jungle ants? And there's so many ways that can play out. But also, in terms of doing work for me, that's nothing. You've given me like a seed, and it's a 6 seed, and I think it's really good. But at the same time, depending on who's reading it, that could be the worst, most boring encounter ever, because it's just like, oh, you see 367 jungle ants, they're 120 foot away, what do you do? You have to bring a lot to it, and that's its strength and its weakness, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like you have to decide, are you the expert GM who's looking for OSR or NSR material to hack apart, or are you looking for something to pick up and run? And as you say, always, I think that's such an excellent point, is in the back of your mind, could I just make up something better? Which is one reason why for a long time I like backed into this, because I played D&D as a kid, and all the World of Darkness games, but over time it was like I'm never using any of the published content as written. You know, I use the rules and then we're changing it and making stuff up. And so I just kind of ignored it for like a while and kept playing the games, just ignored what anyone was doing, because it was like, well, who cares? And then finding the OSR blogs, it was like, oh, these guys have some better ideas than I've had, or just new ideas, and that kind of got me back into like, okay, there are people publishing new stuff. It's not just, you know, then Wizards of the Coast, now Hasbro. But I think that's such an interesting tension, right, between what could I do, what's ready to go out of the box, and then kind of settings that require more input. And there's some sort of collaboration, and where do you want to fall on that spectrum? There is no right or wrong answer, maybe, but it's like some works are more collaborative, some are like fully, you know, you do this.
Yeah, they've done the shit for you.
Yeah, that seems like a constant negotiation that you have to have with yourself and with the prospective GM of any game, right?
Yeah. Like ultimately, it is a. And again, I think that's a really healthy tension. I think it's great to try and play with that as well, because like sometimes, even in the same product, you might lean on more one way and then more the other. Like, some stuff might be extremely open-ended, and it'll be like, this is entirely up to you to interpret. But there's ways to do that, because I've seen some writers do that, and it almost feels like a cop-out, where it's like, I don't know, 2d20 damage or whatever, I guess. And like, if you put that in print, you've fucked up. I'm paying you money. You can at least tell me what fucking dice to roll if you even roll it up. Like, if they're just like, oh, here's what happens, and they don't put any mechanical implementation, fine, but don't call attention to it. But yeah, no, it's definitely one that needs to, and again, no right answer. Like sometimes I'm in the mood for something where it's like, fuck you, just give me the bare basics and I want to do everything myself. Like all you've done is save me rolling some dice. And yeah, other times like, actually, I'd like you to do some more work for me and actually give me something, a cool idea to run with beyond just a bunch of jungle ants.
And is that somewhat style, though, of the thing? It's like Troika, for example, and the community around it is putting out these settings with, as you say, they're kind of built around the character classes, the roles, and everything else devolves from there. And those are kind of jokes, and they imply a setting and often are bundled in a way that implies a setting, but they don't tend to be written out in full. Whereas, thinking of Gradient Descent, clearly that's more of a, although there's wiggle room and there's a lot of ambiguity, it's sort of a full space dungeon, it's filling a different brief. So I guess it's a question of what is the brief, and I guess going back to your career, I mean, how much of that is you pitching people, and I guess maybe that's a question of change over time. Was it beginning you were pitching people and then later on they're pitching you and saying, Luke, we want someone to write a thing like this, is that the kind of thing you want to write? Can you talk a little bit about that? Or
yeah, let me get a list up. Hang on, I need to get a list of all this.
If you've just done too many books, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, my parents would be like, "Oh, how many is it now?" I was like, "I don't fucking know. I don't." Right, where is it? Published works. Oh, I need to update this as well. So early on, like to start off with, it was just a case of I'd literally write the whole manuscript and then just like send that to Daniel. Like, take it. That's how Fever Swamp went. That's how Acid Death Fantasy went. I think Acid Death. No, yeah, that's how Acid Death went, because that started as blog posts and it got massively more fleshed out, built upon, and then it's for the numerous editions. There's a Kickstarter. And it was like, oh, stretch goal, write a thing, please. And I was like, cool, no worries, we'll do. Pound of Flesh brought on for Gradient Descent. I think it was me who said I'd like to write something for you, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. A lot of the work, looking at it, like Voltu, Isle, and Treasure, Wolves, they're all quite self-directed, so that's a lot more. I'm just going to write something and like either we'll self-pub it or it will find its own home and find its own audience like that. Because I think for me, certainly up until like this year, that's always been like my guiding kind of like thing is like I'm making it for me, and like if other people like it, hey, great, and if other people want to sell it, like hey, great, brilliant. But it's not necessarily ever I try not to be like, oh, what's going to sell? And this is like it's an interesting balance now with the kind of full-time role where it is like for me, I'd never ever compromise to make it a better product. And now, I've got Sean to do that for me. Sean will say, no, like you need to meet the audience where they're at a bit. You can't disappear up your own ass. Whereas like for a lot of like the self-pub stuff, the self-directed is just like. I think the big one, like with Wolves, there's no cross-referencing between hexes. So, like, if an object's hidden in a different hex, I don't tell you that in the hex description. Like, fuck you, go find it. Pretend to be the player and read around and find the object. Which is terrible as a product design. Fully admit to that. But I think it's, like, experientially as the reader, as the GM before the game, I think it does something important where it's like, where is it? I don't know. But yeah, so I think a lot of it is self-directed rather than people saying like, hey, do you want to write stuff? I have more recently had more people be like, do you want to do like a little adventure as like a stretch goal or whatever? And those are fun as well because like you get like given a brief and it's like, where can I put myself in this? Where's the gap where I kind of put myself in? So there's one for I don't remember the name of the game. But there was one where it was like, you need to do a city, and that was it, just a city. And I'd read a book where it was, this dude wrote a little potted history of every street in his city. So it's like, oh, I'll steal that format, which is, I've not seen an RPG do that before. And that was like really fun, where it's like, take the brief that you've been given and find your own spin on it. And those ones were really fun, really enjoyable to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. I do want to go back to Wolves Upon the Coast. So that's a self-directed kind of decision. Is that like the first system system adjacent thing that you've put out, or?
So the timeline gets weird because Swivers I wrote way back when. It's had like a very long path to actually coming out in print.
And that's just coming out now, right?
Yeah. So I wrote that way back when, weirdly, because I was dissatisfied with Stars Without Number. So I was like, oh, I'm going to write my own fantasy RPG. Go figure. But yeah, sorry, I think Swivers was like the first thing like way back when. Then I think the next systemic thing might have been Violence, and then it doesn't have like a print release or anything. Violence is there's no rules for anything that isn't violence. It's kind of like because I had this thing where like I like to strip out mental stats. Like there's no intelligence, no wisdom, no charisma.
Yeah.
That's all role
Yeah.
play. It's like Cormac McCarthy role playing. You only roll for the physical stats. You describe stuff that happens physically. Is like my very over the top description for it. And Violence is just like how to make gunfights very quick but feel very impactful. Was the kind of the brief for that one. And then it's Wolves, which is it all came out of me rereading original Dungeons and Dragons and being like, okay, let's make it like mine. Which was fun because it was originally it was going to be an OD&D retro clone, just cleaned up how I like it. And I got to the bit where it has the like the tables for making a hex crawl. And I was like, I could do this, but that's been done. Maybe we should just make just make the hex crawl instead. And then that went from, I'll just make a little one to like, I just made Wolves on the Coast over like 2-3 years.
Just the entire Isle of Britain, and not big.
No
big deal.
It's the same thing.
No big deal.
It's the same as doing the tables. That is because that one it had its roots in when I rewrote all the monsters in OD&D, not thinking that would go anywhere. And then as the sequel, because Monsters and Treasure goes together in OD&D, so I'll do the treasure. And like they were all definitely, without being deliberately linked, they were all definitely in the same universe. And I was like, oh, well, I guess those are the Monster and Treasure books I'm using for Wolves. So it's kind of an interesting experience of pulling together multiple different, originally disparate but all made around the same time things. Like it's like the Isle slots right in because it's written around the same time. But it's not like deliberate as such. But yeah, it's cool. It's fun.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, so you're reacting to like OD&D as well as Troika as well as Mothership. So yeah, I mean that's something interesting that I find. Different writers have different ideas about system, and a lot of the same dissatisfactions, but they produce kind of ultimately different results in terms of okay, I'm going to do something else, or I'm going to sort of stick to this. And you've seen a lot of people really double down on some version of D20, but I do appreciate that like. Even with the Troika books, I mean, it also just gets you out of that way of thinking to not have everything be a retro clone.
Yeah.
So you're doing something that isn't mechanically the same. It doesn't have the same stats. And it was funny for me, like with the grid system, I've used Acid Death Fantasy many times as really a jumping off point with just like encounters. But then the stats don't make any sense, so it's like, all right, every single time I have to kind of look at it anew and be like, let me do this active translation. And the same with Mothership. I mean, it's kind of fun to force yourself to be like, all right, there is some way to like make it work as a GM, and if you're sort of at that expert level of GMing, it's not like hard, but it's very different than like just endless everything being a retro clone of D&D. So I appreciate that we started there, but we just ended up with like, let me tell this like weird version of kind of European history, all these other elements that are going beyond that.
Because it's like there's enough retro clones, right? Like they're weird because the thing I like about a retro clone, like if someone makes one, I will read it because you're playing the same, like it's like when like jazz bands play like the same standard. Like, because you know all the notes, you know how it's meant to go. Any deviation is like highlighted, right? And it's like, that tells me something about you and like your priorities. Like the fact you didn't put treasure tables in there tells me you don't know what you're doing or whatever. Not quite that extreme, but like your own emphasis, your own priorities, and how much you're willing to change it is really informative. So that's like a really cool thing that I like about retro clones. But at the same time, I don't need any more.
Yeah.
Like I'll get the digital. I've got the one that I use to run games with. I don't need more. But they are interesting. So please don't stop. But also, everyone should also go make other things at the same time. You should do both. It's a healthy tension.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
I think yeah. It's easy to say if you write very quickly and well. So I think some of it is really a skill issue. And I mean, obviously, like some of your impressive oeuvre is just like getting a lot of stuff done that is good enough to publish, right? But I think many of us do have these ideas. Again, day job depending, different interest depending. But have like for 5 different books, and it's like, okay, where do I start?
Yeah.
So yeah, Chris, did you have other questions about kind of? And Luke, please, I mean, if there's things you want to talk about we're surveying like a bunch of different kinds of books. So before we get to Mothership, is there other stuff we want to talk about? I mean, I guess it was a simple question. This is not as deep as I think some of the things we're just saying, although maybe it'll get there. But what I was thinking again about the Acid Death Fantasy has really good art. And just really simple question. How involved are you with Melsonian or any of these other and now it's different full time. But how do you work with book designers, artists? How much of that is you directing, and how much of it is you just send them words? Just curious.
So this drives, especially Andrew Walter, drives him fucking insane. Because whatever he sends me, even if it's totally different to what I envisioned, I'm like, that's fucking cool. Like, one of my favorite things, even as someone who's like, oh, you don't always need loads of art or any art in an RPG book. I do fucking love RPG art. I think I get misconstrued as someone who hates art. I don't. I love it. I just don't like the default of you need to have loads. But I love where, and again, this is the collaboration element that we talk about with GMs and players around the table. I'll write something, and then I get to see somebody read it and see what they pull from that, entirely divorced from what I want. So I hate giving notes that can you change this, can you change that. I love to see it where it's like they took something and made it theirs. Like in ADF, like the tank. I just thought like a tank, like an Abrams tank. And then David Hoskins is like super ornate, like church organ looking tank. And it's like, holy shit, that fucking rocks. That's so different to what I imagined. So that's really cool. Like, for me, I try not to be involved. I try not to think about it. It's just, it's all on them. Like, for me, I like the idea of you're hiring a professional, so let them be a professional.
For sure. Yeah.
With Wolves, when it has a print edition in 2025 at this point, probably, rather than giving an art pitch, I'm approaching artists who will take the text and just find something they think is cool to illustrate. And I'm not involved. Like, they can send me a sketch or whatever if they want beforehand, but for the most part, I'm just like, here's like the money, here's the book that you've been assigned. Just find something cool in there, and like consistently great results, because it's like they are finding what resonates with them. And like, I want to draw that.
Yeah,
it's great. It's really
I
fun.
love
That's
that.
part of the process.
I mean, also as an illustrator, I appreciate that approach.
Yeah, I was going to ask Chris, is that the perfect brief? Is a really good writer just sends you words and is like, figure it out?
I think so, honestly. That sounds like a dream, really.
Yeah, no, I think everyone so far, like some people are like, I ain't got time, can you send me an art pitch? Which is like, that's fine. Everyone's busy.
Yeah.
It's a little different for everybody, too.
Yeah, for sure. But when people do have the time, it's great.
I feel like internally, because we have artists who write, Chris, and obviously among them, and Ethan Gould, who's the lead artist on Stealthfleet, the RPG. It's like hard because I think we'd be okay with less art, but there's also the impulse to like use the skills we have.
Yeah.
And also, I will say, just surveying, a lot of, especially NSR books, there is kind of a lot of art and design. It's not all art and qual illustration. There's a lot of expressive typography, big designed tables, just kinetic kind of background elements. As opposed to the OSR, I mean, that's where I see a real difference. The OSR is like black and white, very little art, two columns, like it's kind of elegant. And the NSR is beginning to kind of be much more expressionistic and driven by, I think, like poster art largely. So limited color palettes, but there is a lot of art per page. And it does make it harder because it would be a lot easier as a writer. I'm primarily just a writer and I can do layout. So it's like, I could just write things and lay them out and hire someone to do a cover and be like, you got a lot of words in one cool picture. But I think we're kind of competing in a way with works that don't do that give you a relatively high density, at least, one key image every 4 pages or so. Yeah. So I think it's interesting to think about from, they're different standpoints, right? Whether you're the writer, the artist, or the sort of person publishing it, trying to make money on it, what is the right amount of art is again, there's no right answer, but it's
yeah,
it does vary.
I think the like Kickstarter has a weird market pressure of just and again, I'm not trying to say don't hire artists, because like I've had people say like, oh, why do you hate art again? I don't. Please pay your artists. They're great.
You heard it here first.
Yeah.
There is like an upwards pressure in terms of, as Kickstarters get bigger and bigger, production value spikes.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think there is a downwards pressure on that, on like people who can't pass the first hurdle to get that big Kickstarter spike. It doesn't help that there's some shitheads have appropriated the idea of having little to no art, and like they're like, oh, we don't have art because we're being true to old school. It's like, fuck off. Those people are losers. Fucking chuds. But there's like, it's tough because obviously I'm like, that's not me. And I'm like, I just think it's cool if we lower the production value, make it so more people can make more stuff.
Yeah.
And if it's a book about the words, make it about the words. Like, that's the aisle, right? There's like the design aspect, but there isn't the art aspect. Like deliberately, experimentally, or like Wolves, where it's like, well, I want to make it really cheap. And also, It's just there's something refreshing about not having much art for me as like someone who like reads a lot, because it's very interesting when it's I can't read this. My words my eyes like sliding off the page, and is that because it's an RPG book? Like, are you coming to it as an RPG book and you're expecting that more like a magazine, walk influenced layout? Or is it like, because I mean, obviously some people like struggle with just like a novel, right? How much of that is preloaded from knowing, oh, it's an RPG book, I'm not going to engage with it as written material almost. So it's an odd one. And we'll see what happens as more people try more things.
Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts on this as a time traveler from the 1800s, but I can't stand the punk aesthetic too much. I mean, I get it on the one hand, and as a fan of like poster art and like European design, I get it. And like punk ethos, I totally get. But as a reader and a writer, and I just think the elegant look evolved over time, like for reasons, like for readability. You know what I mean? Like there's a reason why, and even with magazine composition, which is really different. I was noticing this in this. I'm basically writing this academic article about visual regimes and TTRPG design, and like looked at 100 books really deeply, and like a lot of them, none of them use what we'd call magazine composition. I think in like graphic design.
Oh, really?
Okay. Like they pretty much all use either 2-column or crazy, like punk. Everything is just like, I'm driving the car off the cliff, Thelma and Louise with expressive type, and you can't really read anything. And that's fun, but it's like I actually think they're missing that middle of like the reason that magazines look the way they do is so that you can still read it, but it has kineticism. It has kind of like it pulls your eye in a direction. It uses expressive type, but not at the sacrifice of like, what the hell does that say? Because everything is like a fractal, like black letter font. If it's metal. Blah blah blah. So I think there's like a kind of weird missing middle where designers overcorrected into punk, which I love the idea of, but it's also divorced from the politics. So it's meaningless to say like we're punk in style, but hey, we're selling a product, buy our product. Because as a writer and a reader, I would rather just put it in 2 columns so I can fucking read it, personally. But I might be in the minority among like current RPG.
Oh, we're definitely in the minority.
I mean,
but like for me,
I was just going to say that's the conversation that Wythe and I have been having, laying out the kind of early access edition for my game Dance Macabre, where it's like, okay, well, it's like this kind of OSR inspired thing. Do we go with the elegant 2-column? Do we like try to get weirder? Do we try? How do you push it? And it's I don't know. It's frustrating because I'm also in the camp of just being like, just put it in 2 columns, make it elegant, make it readable, and then call it a day. But I think you're right, Luke. There is a kind of like downward pressure that's coming onto designers through Kickstarter because of the fact that there's just more money there now.
Yeah, and like I don't blame individuals for doing it. I get it. You want to make the stuff that's going to, like, not just because it sells well, you also like it's nice to be part of the general trajectory, unless you're a contrarian stick in the mud like me who is happy doing the wrong thing all the time. It's because even in the 2-column, right, there's variety, because you look at like OSE adventures, like bullet points and bold and italics, and for me, it's fucking unreadable. I can't stand it. And a lot of people are like, it really helps with like, for me to scan it, they love it. And I'm like, for me, you put one bold word on a page, that's all I'm looking at. I'm locked on. I can't use the rest of this page.
Well,
anymore.
you are in an extreme minority there, just from like the history of typography. Like people do use bullets because of readability. Basically, I mean, it makes it more legible. I mean, they can see this is something that I can quickly like work through. But yeah, I mean, again, I think what we've revealed is there's clearly, there's kind of a spectrum here as well. And some of it is knowing what you want is something I'm hearing is like, what you want, and you know how to work with artists, you know how to work with designers, you know how to write the things you want to write. And you have that sort of that confidence or sense of self, which I think maybe is helpful. Just trying to take away, like if someone was listening to this, how would I do it myself? It's like, well, partially learn what you think is actually good, and maybe try to do that, as opposed to following like fads or, to your point, feeling pressured because of kind of zine quest, like what you're seeing on Twitter. Because it's impossible if you don't have the capital. How can you compete with someone spending $100,000 to print something? It's literally impossible.
Yeah, unless you're like fucking someone over, like in the production like budget, like it's not going to happen.
Right,
exactly.
Whatever, something bad.
Like, you can make a humble book humbly. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, in fact, that's kind of cool, right? That's like, oh fuck, like this is like a little team and they put it together and they love it. Cool, I love that. That's a great value. I think like the point of know what you like and know what you don't like as well. This is like when people are like, stop being a hater, and it's like, no, like not liking things is a big part of taste. Right, like,
and it's not hating them, also, right? You don't have to hate it. You just don't love it. Yeah.
We can. I mean, it's also like you
just
can
not
appreciate something and critique it at the same time, right? It's like
Exactly.
that's totally possible.
It's a big part of the mentorship I do. Like a big part of that is like we read a book and we rip it to shreds. Even if we like the book, we will find everything wrong with the book and be like, how would you do it better? Why isn't it working? Why do you think it happened? And it's really useful because it's something that you can't really do in public. I think because TTRP it's too small.
Yeah.
And like if I'm like, here's like 10 reasons this book sucks. Obviously you wouldn't do like a list, you know what I mean? Like here's why I think this has a lot of problems. A lot of people are like, what the fuck, man? Like you can't do that. Like why are you ripping on another creator? It's like I'm not ripping on the work because I don't like it, and that's fine.
And to improve as a writer, it's different to do it publicly as a especially in your position, like if you're publishing or in us as publishers, right? You don't want to start fights, but it's different as a writer, maybe with a friend or mentee, to say, I remember this in grad school with Michael Cunningham, like he would read our stories and stop when he had any sense of confusion or boredom. And it wasn't like, therefore the whole story is bad. It was just letting you know. So sometimes he would read like a whole page or two and be like, this is all really good, guys. And sometimes he'd read like the first sentence and stop and be like, I would put this down. Like if this is in the New Yorker, I would literally skip to the next thing. And he'd be like, that's just my honest reaction. It's not like the end of the world. And we, you get used to it because you're writing things every week or whatever for a year. And you're like, okay, I guess that's fair that like, this is honest feedback. So I think it's fair to maybe approach RPGs because I hear you. I also really don't want to offend other indie creators whom I like really love. I want to be like in brotherhood with, but I want to be a better writer. I don't want to be a better editor. And so like, I have to also be real about like, I don't understand this sentence. Like, I don't know why you wrote that. And like, you have to be able to do that to yourself and to people you're working with in some way that works,
The big part of it is like coming to it honestly and being like in good faith. Like, what have I missed first? Like, that's an important step where it's like, have I missed a page or like, have I misunderstood something? But like, once you do your due diligence, it's like, okay, no, like this could be better. What do I need to do? Like, I literally, especially if it's like a book that I'll be using for like annotate it or like highlight stuff I don't think is good. Like I'll circle a bit like fuck off, this is bad, do better. Like and like like to that level, like treat it like you're the editor before you use it, and like you need to have that critical lens on other people's work. 'Cause it's much easier to apply it to other people's work, and then you can bring some of that to your own work. There's also like you want to try and defeat the internal censor, the internal critic, and like just get words on the page first. So like it is again tensions where it's like put whatever you want on the page, but like also be prepared to go through it and cut and edit and make it good and highlight a paragraph and be like, this is shit, I'm redoing it. Because that's part of the job, right? Like that's the process of writing is editing to a large degree.
Yes. Revise, and it's different parts of the brain, right? So you need the draft part where you're just like getting words, and then you need to go back with the more critical other part of your brain that's almost like a different person inside you that's like, that part is shit, this part works, you have something good here, but you need to expand on it. Missing connection, missing logic. And I think, again, that's something maybe a lot of writers don't want to do. They're afraid of that second part. So they want to do the first part without the second, or maybe vice versa. It's hard to get something on the page, but it's not that different from other forms of writing in that way. It's a process of revision.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to talk Mothership?
Yeah.
Because that's, so Luke, you were presently, so just to recap, you're presently working full-time on Mothership.
Yes.
I mean, are there other games? I'm sure you're working on your side stuff too, but day job. Your new day job is Mothership focused. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little about, I guess, that collaboration in general, and specifically, I think I know your work. Well, I don't know. I guess I read other stuff before, but Gradient Descent was definitely really mind blowing. I remember when it came out. My brother's friend, who was the designer for the Stillfleet Core rulebook, and I got it, and we're just like, this is really rad. Like, we just never seen anything from a graphic design standpoint that was pushing boundaries that way. I mean, people said that about Merkborg, but like I said, I think that's a little bit of a different tradition. And I think the innovations in Gradient Descent, married with the text, with the adventure, were really like, wow, that's cool. That's a cool way of doing this. So that definitely made me step back and said, who made this? How did this happen? So now that we have you, how did you make it? What are the ideas? Please explain,
So Gradient Descent was mostly written stealing time from work when it was quiet. So because of that, a couple of artifacts of that, the map was done in Excel at first. So the first draft of the map is an Excel spreadsheet with like a bunch of different things set to square grid, black and white, and I actually had like not quite 1-to-1, but close to like 1-to-1 mapping, where I literally like highlight a bunch of cells, paint them white, do a line coming off them. I use it for a lot of other dungeons now as well. And despite it being famous for its bullet-pointed prose, the first draft was written longhand. Like it was written, not longhand, but like in full sentences, full paragraphs, like a traditional key. At that point, then me and Sean were talking about it, and it's like, well, we can't do a 64-page book with this much shit in it longhand. And I think a lot of the innovations, like both in terms of how it's presented, because I think, as far as I think it came up before OC, I'm not 100% sure on that. I know I hadn't seen the OC bullet point style at that point. But using those bullet points was something new to me at that point. And the way that Sean encodes a lot of information graphically, a lot of that was driven by, like, it's got to be under 64 pages at most. Like, what can we do to present information alternatively? What can we do in terms of like logos? What can we do in terms of like highlighting like this area is industrial size? Like how can we present that glyphically? Because like Sean has this whole thing like, can this paragraph be a line? Can this line be like a picture? Can this picture be like a diagram or whatever? His like decomposing and abstracting it down thing. Because I think it's like a big part of the visual feel of the book, like kind of information hierarchy and whatnot is a result of that process of being like, cool, like how do we overload every single element and make sure everything's working as hard as it can? Yeah.
That's interesting. So it started almost with the brief of like, it's a set number of pages, which as a writer is sometimes hard. I found hard because you're like, well,
I didn't think
ideas. But
yeah, I just wrote it. And then Sean was like, this is a zine. It's got to be 64 pages, man. I was like, oh, okay. Like, let's see what we can do. For a lot of time when I write, like, I don't even think about system. I just write the situation and like, oh, I'll add some system shit afterwards. No worries. Because, like, at a certain point, I find all of them are kind of the same. So, like, you could, like, oh, make it for OD&D and for, like, PBTA at the same time. It's like, sure, like, doable. You just write it. It's fine.
Yeah, I agree with that. That being a second order writing task, I also completely agree with, because if it's a good narrative, the way you mechanicalize this, if it's a decent system, it should be mechanicalizable, relatively easily.
Very quickly.
If it's combat, there's going to be a combat system. Okay, how badass is the villain? It's not like, it's not rocket science to be like, okay, well, this person has, more or less of a stat. So it makes sense that you're focused on narrative, and then you go back and kind of bring in mechanical interactions, hooks. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the process, it was interesting because, like, for me, it was all about, like, we'll just build the space. Like, just make the physical space. Like, we didn't necessarily... At no point was I like, the theme is that you might lose your humanity or, like, become... Like, it was all kind of evolving, like, okay, they make androids. Like, what does that mean? And it's like, oh, what if you can make a perfect android? Okay, what does that mean? And, like, again, it's that kind of... And then yourself and being like, okay, like... How do we pull this thread all the way through the kind of presenting material and then going back and kind of reinforcing it and adding it? So again, it's kind of that like accretion. Like it's, you start with a thing and you keep adding layers until it forms a little pearl. That's the kind of overall strategy.
Can I ask what was the original page count going to land at before cutting gradient descent down?
I would love to tell you, but I've been looking for a while in my Google Drive to find the original. Because it was like 2 jobs ago. It's there somewhere. I'm sure I emailed it back to my main email address, but I cannot find the original. I think there was like maybe 1 or 2 areas that hadn't been like fully written out, like in full kind of paragraph style. But it's going to be big, very big before we switched. I think like one thing with that is... So there's like an article floating around saying like bullet points are baby food for your brain, which pissed a lot of people off, which is very funny. But I think there's an important trick where with bullet points, I think you should always write it out in a paragraph and then boil it down to bullet points, because I think, I can't prove this, but I think there's the fact that you once had the connective tissue and you've kind of boiled it away. I think it makes those bullet points stronger, and some kind of almost like a ghost of the connections that were originally there in the full text somehow bleeds through. Because you're writing those bullet points with the knowledge of all of the extra stuff, I think it makes those bullet points better, and it makes them yeah, as I say, contains some sort of the vestigial aspect of those connective elements and the kind of idea of like this is all happening in one thing. Whereas I think if you write straight into bullet points, it feels like a list of isolated things that have been just kind of put in the room, rather than feeling, to me anyway, as much of a cohesive whole. Again, I can't prove that. That's a feeling I have about bullet points.
Yeah, I can understand that. Like, even just from the aspect of making the bullet points, having your own context and contextualization for them feels important. Because otherwise it is just kind of a string of random items, right? It's not a list. It's not a connected thing. It's just whatever might fit the theme.
Yeah. It may also be style, like, because I tend to write long, and I come from literary fiction, and so I write in bullet points for game design. I write pretty much everything is an outline, and it's it's like a numbered outline, and then so it's basically bullet points with like bold leaders, and then a separator, and then the text. But I mean, I've moved in that direction for a number of reasons, from like writing on my phone to just trying to write shorter, But I think that maybe it's because I'm thinking and tend to have a lot of connections and interconnections. So maybe it depends on the kind of writer you are. Like if you're a writer who's searching for the connections of the bigger plot, don't write in bullet points. But if you tend to overwrite kind of more stories, and you want to break it down to like discrete elements that for many people are going to read more quickly on the page, then, try this sort of outlining method. But I think that's interesting anyway, to even that it's come up, because it's actually something I think about a lot as a writer. And I don't think on this show we've even had anyone mention specifically beef with bullet points or whatever, it just hasn't been part of the discussion. We've talked a lot about dice and all these other issues. So no, that's cool. I mean, gradient descent. Yeah, there's so much we could probably do just a whole episode on this one book. But I am curious to round out the question of like what it was originally, or just your process. I mean, I don't know if this is a spoiler, I guess. So sorry, Luke, in advance, but the Monarch and Minotaur, right? This kind of, I don't know, godlike AI construct. It's like, was that bigger? Like, basically, was there a different plot or a bigger plot, or the plot itself, the situation rather, was the same, and it was more a question of presentation, trimming down wording? Do you know what I mean? Like, what changed in the process of working with Sean and the team?
The Minotaur came up after the fact. The Minotaur came up during production. Monarch was always set in stone. Silas came up during it, but Silas is my one, for me anyway, that's the joke. It's the one joke I'm allowed in a horror book, right? And it's Silas being a prick. For those who haven't read it, Silas is an AI who controls like a sub-area, and he only lets you in if you find some like sealed environmental suits. And he has a pack right there that you could have had right inside. It's like, I needed to know that you were committed before I let you in, which is a fun, and also like it's like fuck you. But yeah, the Minotaur came up in the writing where it's like there needs to be a thing here, and Sean was like, what if there was like the anti-monarch? And it's like, oh cool, okay, let's build that. And then you get like Labyrinth Minotaur, because like there's like in Pound of Flesh, there's a lot of the like kind of Shakespeare references. And in Gradient Descent, obviously, we've got the I forget his name, the philosopher's quote with "I dreamt it was a butterfly." And then it's I've got the book somewhere here. That's really frustrating. I forgot his name. I think it's Zhangzi, something like that. I'm sure I've butchered the pronunciation there.
It's Zhuangzi.
Zhuangzi. There we go. Thank you. And like he's a really interesting thinker. And then kind of Labyrinth contains the Minotaur, which has its own whole thing. Zhuangzi has his line around that there is no governor, and then you've got like a monarch. So there's another kind of aspect there, which again, that's not deliberate. That's just occurred to me. Which is like, for me, that's fun when you realise these connections post hoc, and it's like, oh shit, maybe I meant something there that I wasn't aware of, and adding that like subconscious element is cool, and like trying to unpick it.
There's always that like Joseph Campbell level of connection that we're not even aware of, right? And you're just kind of putting it down without really thinking about it.
Yeah, it's just like a hidden resonance that just kind of appears, and it's not a designed choice, which is very fun, especially when like if you have like a bigger body of work, you can see where do these things keep coming up, which is always fun. But yeah, no, I'm trying to think if there's anything else around that question.
Yeah. Well, so it's also interesting in general. It sounds like the graphic design actually did come later, even though it feels to me when you see the whole, it's almost like you would. How could you write this book? It feels like you'd have to have the design first and then write to the room that you have. But that's not what happened. It sounds like you wrote it and then they designed and you boiled it down or moved things around. And added in the case of the Minotaur, an extra element here and there, but pretty much it was what you wanted, right? It was the setting you wanted, just presented in a way, right?
So it's always like a collaboration, like editors and like the graphic designer coming in, and like one thing that's really fun about working with Tuesday Night is, as compared to like Milsonia, where I just kind of hand in the manuscript, they'll do their thing and it kind of pops out, but it stays about the same. Obviously, I'm involved in the editing process. The Tuesday Night products, they're a lot more collaborative. There's a lot more voices coming in. There's a lot more kind of like renegotiation and changing. And like, I think the fact it feels really seamless, people are like, how did you come up with this idea? And I can be like, oh, actually, that one wasn't me. That's really fun for me, where it's like it all blends together and it becomes like one unified voice. With the current Mothership project, actually, because it's full time, we can afford to take the time to be like, okay, look, I'm just going to do a few draft layouts just to see what works with what you're producing. We can tweak what you're doing. I can tweak what I'm doing, and kind of meet in the middle. So that's been quite cool as well, where it's like, okay, look, I wrote up one of the bounties for the Bounty Hunter book, and it's like, okay, cool, I need you to add these elements because I've got room here, so I can stick those in, and that's like unified. And then I can, like Sean's perspective, we can like, okay, I need to make sure I've got this many words per page. If it's more than that, flag it, so it's a 2-pager, and we'll kind of play with it like that, which is cool. It's really fun to adjust that live.
Yeah, it's definitely, that's something we've also noticed as a smaller studio, but growing, we have templates, but it's like at some point it would be better to work directly with writers and artists to kind of build a template for each project, as opposed to saying, you're trying to project page counts. Like if you have to think about like, what is the product? How long is this? And do we need to cut stuff? How much art do we need? And a lot of those projections we're like okay at making, but it would be better to have kind of, all the time and graphic design skills in the world to sort of, do everything bespoke. So that's very cool anyway from just again, congrats on that job. Cause it sounds like a fun way to create, to be able to work directly with that. So I guess, I don't know. Chris, do you have other questions? I mean, so I guess now we're in the Mothership era of rock, but yeah, Chris, I wanted to see if you had other stuff we should cover for sure.
No, I don't think anything before Mothership, honestly, before our current timeline.
Yeah. I guess one question is just writing for Mothership itself as a system and that world. I mean, this is all to segue into sort of talking about a little about sort of the politics of games or like the meaning of games. Since Mothership has some light, the assumption is generally there's sort of dystopian evil space companies, and you're generally a worker, and definitely in Gradient Descent, you're not just a worker, but like you may be a replicant, right? Like spoiler, like you're not even sure who you are, which is really great. Like I think, like I'll just say as a plug, if you haven't read it, dear listener, there's a mechanic called the bends that's really kind of mind blowing. That is kind of a depth mechanic, so it reminded me of like Gardens of Yin, but also has this Blade Runner, who am I? Is this a dream kind of thematic tie-in? So I think there's a lot sort of baked into Gradient Descent that's like, there's something sort of an Easter egg, on every page or something in terms of game design to discover. But yeah, can you say a little about sort of working on Mothership, either as a system or as this kind of thematic, dark, dystopian space world? Because that's obviously very much where Chris and I are coming from in terms of design is like, the world's shit. Let's make games that reflect that. So, this podcast is kind of talking to other game designers about the same, how do you make games that have some meaning? And I think, again, just to focus on Gradient Descent, there is a strong theme of like, not just the company and the problematic nature of the company, but specifically AI. And you have a couple different, you have the Minotaur as almost like rehabilitative version of like, what if AI wasn't bad? But you do have a lot of different kinds of space horror, science horror in there. So I don't know, maybe that's a vague question, but can you talk a little about the writing specifically in the thematic world of Mothership?
So like as I mentioned before, I try not to like think about themes because for me I find it paralyzing. Like if I know what the theme is, then I've made myself too rigid a metric by which to measure the quality of any writing. Whereas if I'm just like letting it evolve and kind of adding new elements, I think if you're like, this is the theme, I think you can end up where you get something that's a bit one note. And as you pointed out, like immediately, like AI bad, but also, like the Minotaur kind of undercuts that. And it's like, could it be good? And I think by letting it kind of grow, you kind of build those counterpoints and like, you don't want to have a conclusive, I think with something like this, especially a game, because it's an interactive medium, and I think any messaging by dint of that should be interactive and it should be give and take and it should be collaborative with the people engaging with it at the table. So you never want to have a correct answer at the end. I mean, there's some stuff that's obviously wrong. Like, this is really memorable for me. Somebody was like, "Oh, I ran Gradient Descent, and my players play the troubleshooters." It's like, those are the bad guys. Like, unequivocally, those are the worst dudes going. Like, it literally says they shoot first and ask questions later. Like, why would, what? So yeah, you definitely still allow for, like, because there's no right answer doesn't mean there aren't wrong answers. So Mothership, like, broadly, like, for me, the big stuff I always respond to is, like, the economic horror aspect, because it's like, yeah, like, having a job sure is awful, and, like, enriching the monsters who make your lives miserable does suck. There's something fun with, like, there's, like, a glimmer of hope in some of it, where it's kind of like that traveller, like, well, we pay off the mortgage, maybe we'll be okay, and it's like, at what cost? Like, am I still immiserating the world for this tiny little slice of happiness that I can build? There's the kind of active resistance to it, with like, the kind of like, there's this aspect of like unions that come up a lot within Mothership, which is like very interesting about when it's like, okay, like everyone's very isolated. Like, there's not much cross communication between different regions and different zones because like space travel is slow and expensive. So it's really interesting, and there is something inspiring about the idea of like, oh, people still unionize, not just in their local area, but like across the broader network. So I think that's like really cool. Yeah. And then you have these like very human problems of like, damn, companies, like corporations suck, capitalism's a bitch. And then you also have like, man, it sure would suck if there was like an alien that would like destroy your dreams and turn you into a flesh puppet. Like, yep, that would suck. You're not wrong. So like there is and again, there's that kind of slight ironic distancing of like, it's in space, there's aliens, whatever. But I think like it's definitely when you like zoom out a bit, and you give yourself that, like, that's like all horror movies, right? Like it's a meditation, like a real problem, and it's like the fact that there's a spooky killer who like jumps out of the mist just lets us examine the other thing a bit closer than we might do if it was like all very real and played very straight. Plus, sometimes it's just fun. That's fine too. Yeah. But I think when you like, hyper exaggerate and take it like almost slightly beyond the point of parody, it's like, okay, but like now we can like really get to the point of like potentially examine some of the stuff and talk about it. Like even with the kind of because like, you know, androids are just slaves, right? Like they're human beings. Like I think that's pretty clear throughout the book. Like sure, they're in like a different body or whatever, but they're human beings ultimately. But you're still the one breaking into this place because of money. Like the primary hook there is always like, oh, these artifacts are worth a lot, huh? Sure would be crazy if someone like broke in and sold them like that. And like, what does that say about the fact that that's like a viable path where it's like, yeah, kick in the doors, steal like some potentially world-ending artifact and sell it to the highest bidder. Like, and that's maybe what the AI wants as well. And then you get into this interesting thing, because for me, like a big thing, I mean, again, particularly as like, you know, like a white dude or whatever, like complicity's like fuck. Like that's like the big bad thing. That's the thing that you're really worried about in some ways. Because like, sure, you're not at the sharp end of oppression, but you definitely don't want to be like helping push that. Like, you don't want to be the one on the other side of that. And I think there's like something. And again, because you can only, to a certain degree, write from your own perspective. Like, you can always understand others, but you never want to appropriate that and write from someone else's perspective. So I think, for me anyway, the idea of complicity is something there's a lot of thinking on, a lot of like reflection on, and I think like because it's uncomfortable as well. Like even talking about it, I test my chest. Like, oh, you sure you want to touch on this one? Because like it's horrible. It gets under your skin because it's like not just as a bad thing happening. You're involved. It's your fault, or at least you benefit. And that's like, like you should sit in that uncomfortability because shit is bad.
Well, that's very much, we can't compete with Sean, but that's our whole thing, complicity. That's the whole point of our game. So this is, glad to hear you say that that's of interest to you, and maybe one day we'll be able to, collaborate on something there.
Yeah, I've seen Mothership described as a sci-fi neoliberal hellscape before. I don't remember who said that or where I saw it, but that has always stuck with me, where it's like, oh yeah, this is about the current moment. It's just about neoliberalism. In a way, with aliens, of course, but
yeah, right. And I think that's something interesting with Mothership, as because I think this is coming from the tradition of Alien and Blade Runner.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Mothership is, not to ding it, but I mean it's just another instantiation of same, which is we're in the same world of like a familiar corporate dystopia, but without it. It still feels a little open as to like how bad is it and what is your relationship to each other. I mean, it's more of a base system as opposed to like a deeply, thought out setting. And then you have books on top of it, like Ready to Sin is a scenario, or other people are building kind of whole worlds on top of that. But I do think it's interesting to see some of those themes collide. And so you have the general neoliberalization of work, and you have to do stuff for money, and you're complicit in evil. And then here you have specifically this kind of meditation on what it is to be human, and AI and androids. But it's all filtered through a really dark, grimy, although not like, there's not a lot of art that's like people getting ripped apart, but there's a lot of like partial android, like partial pseudo people. And so there's kind of a levels of hell. It's a very like Hieronymus Bosch thinking about the near future of, constructed human life. And even the terms, I mean, the idea that there's pseudo milk eels, it's just like, what is a pseudo milk eel? It's so disgusting. But it somehow feels, somehow corporate. I mean, I think the evocative horror, to me, this is one of the best I've seen from Mothership in terms of evoking a specific kind of, I think back to the first time as a kid I saw Alien, and it was the most terrifying thing, the little kid that I'd ever seen. But it's like why I write science fiction today. And so I think this book is very much in that tradition of kind of not, the horror of neoliberalism, yes, but also like some specific other types of horror, which, as you say, creates a lot of distance and allows us to have different kinds of philosophical conversations because we're not worried about our own day jobs. We're relaxing into fiction, inhabiting a persona. So again, not really a question, but just, just thinking about like the function of games like this.
I think because it pulls a lot on, like when we were dumb teenagers, there was like a factory that, because in the UK, if you didn't force entry, it's only a civil offence, so it's fine. So we'd go into this factory that was like 15, 20-minute walk away. And a lot of the specific stuff in Gradient Descent kind of pulls on that. And I think there's something, the wastage of like, because this building, this big factory, like an office front, hadn't been used for years. It's like, this place is fucking huge. And it's just sitting here rotting. Like nothing's being used. I think like there's another layer there where it's like, what a waste. Like there's like not just the people, but like the actual structure itself. Like, with Gradient Descent, you got this giant sick ass factory that's like super high tech, and it's like, wasn't making enough money, so we just turned it off. Like, that's terrible. That sucks. And there is like the sheer waste of it when like so many people are like unable to be homed or whatever, and like then you've got like, oh, here's a factory. Like, sure, it wouldn't be perfect, but like better than nothing, presumably.
Yeah, you see that here a lot in New York as well. Where it's just like, that's just an empty building where the real estate is the most expensive you can imagine it. Why?
Yeah, no, it's just, and then there's definitely that aspect for me, which again is like very personal. Like seeing that waste is distasteful, right?
No, I think in general, a lot of writers in this, I like to think kind of NSR tradition that is politically aware, at least, even if that's not foregrounded in the text, are drawing on personal experiences of working day jobs, maybe being complicit in things we don't really want to do, definitely being aware of these social issues, and not insufficient housing is just one of many that you could name. And I think it'll be interesting to see people grapple with that in different ways. I think a lot of us have grappled with it now to some degree with this sort of space mercenary kicking down the door way. But I think there's probably more and more stories to be told that grapple with other social issues through games in some sort of sophisticated way. We talked with Kayla Dice McQuarrie about her game Psycho Dungeons, which was interesting, where it's sort of like Freudian, like someone's head explode, like literally monsters come out of their head because they're having like like they're having a moment, they're having a anxiety, and it's producing literal monsters. And so it's sort of Ghostbusters meets psychoanalysis. So it is an RPG, and you are sort of fighting monsters, but you're not really fighting like evil. You're trying to help someone through. It's just like a literalization of like their nightmares.
Right.
And I thought
you're literally fighting someone's demons.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. It was such an interesting way to sort of say like, it's kind of a game about real stuff, but also like there is that distance because it is ultimately goblins, and you're entering some fantasy maze. So it felt like a nice have your cake, eat it too kind of like, okay, that's one way to do.
That's also a game about labor politics at the same time, though. Because you play a psycho plumber, like you're like a working class kind of schlub who has to like go clean up other people's, mind states, whatever, their own labyrinths.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of funny tension in that game where it's like, oh yeah, this is some high level, paranormal shit that's happening, but at the same, like, this is just kind of my job. I just have to.
Yeah, it's Tuesday.
I gotta go.
Yeah.
I gotta go clean up
I
a
guess
cyber dungeon. I don't know.
The same with Mothership. Like to some degree, this is some of the most horrifying stuff I've ever seen. But also, like, it's Tuesday, right? Oh, pseudo milk deals. I don't know. Maybe I'm a replicant. Oh, fuck me, Tuesday.
Still have bills to pay. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the thing, right? That's a very valid answer to the bends. It's like, I don't care.
Right.
I might be an android. Who gives a shit?
I still gotta eat, I guess.
It makes you, the reader, be like, wait, am I an android? Oh, shit. I guess, like, I wouldn't know. So,
Yeah.
Well, we're coming up on time, so I guess, Luke, this would be a good time, I think, to turn toward the present, unless there's other things you want to talk about. But we'd love to know kind of what you're working on, what's next, anything you can announce publicly.
Anything you'd like to plug?
Yeah. So I'm like 95% sure Sean's talked about it publicly. So current Tuesday Notebook is the Bounty Hunter book, Wages of Sin. So one of my favourite RPG books ever is 76 Patrons for Classic Traveller, which is just 76 really small little adventure seeds. And it's like, just go for it. And they're all fun. They're all cool. And I was like, okay, well, how do we do that better? How do we make it bigger? So as well as kind of building out Mothership and providing a lot of like tools for people to use. So 100 bounties. So I had to write 100 bounties. It's like 60,000 words or something stupid. Just the bounties. So that's cool. So that'll be out. Well, don't want to jinx anything, but that's moving along very nicely. Moving along at a steady clip.
Nice.
That's like the big one. And then like we've got, what else is there? The Mortboard one just came out, Tefractic Nightmares, if people want to grab that, which is a big hex crawl over a sea of ash. There's a Sea of Sand book by Sam Sorensen that came out recently. It's really good. So that's unfortunate timing for me. I promise I was working this for ages.
Well, we spoke with Sam Sorensen some months back, and he actually
About Seas of Sand.
Yeah, about Seas of Sand specifically, and also specifically about the Isle, because he was, he brought that up specifically as an example of like his perfect adventure was the Isle.
Yeah.
So we'll have to connect y'all at some point.
Oh yeah, me and Sam.
Oh, great.
He's on my giddy little Discord, which is good.
Nice.
Well, great. I mean, I've got New Simulationism lives right here next to me, which is one of Sam's. Very good. Very good shit. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. There's like the big ones, the big recent ones. Oh, and the Fever Swamp reprint, which is that also? Yeah, it's also here. So it has a nice
new cover for Fever Swamp.
Yeah, and it's for OD&D now, rather than the BX clone that we don't talk about, which is good. It's got new art, changed some of the stuff that I wasn't happy with, added some entirely new stuff, some very nice Andrew Walter pictures.
Very cool.
Yeah, the art is great. Fever Swamp has amazing art, for sure.
Yeah, no, I had to beg Andrew to keep some of them, because he was like, no, I hate them now, they're old. There's a couple of the ones.
Well, that's artists.
I get it.
Give them 5 minutes; they'll hate the thing they just did.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, you already see the problems, right? But yeah, I think that's all the stuff that I should plug. The stuff that's brings to mind.
Very cool.
Cool. Well, you're always working on so much stuff that it is unlike. So, this is not the kind of interview where it's like you have a current Kickstarter and that's all you've been working on. It's like you have a ton of stuff. People can find you, they know you, but I'm sure they will. But yes. I'm sure Chris and I will eagerly, scoop up these new projects as well and read them and learn from them. Because ultimately the goal, like some of this discussion we had earlier, we're trying to get better and better and make products that are frankly more fun, more useful, not bloated, not humorless, and not also to me sort of loose or silly or just hard to read. So I think we're somewhat aligned on all of that. But yeah, we'll have to hopefully at some point cross paths. Maybe there'll be a con or something. Maybe we can even go to your neck of the woods for some sort of con at some point.
Yeah.
But until then, please, if you ever want to chat again, it's really been lovely, Luke, and we'd love to have you back on. So thanks for making the time today.
Yeah, this is great fun.
Yeah, and thanks everybody for watching, potentially listening, definitely listening. Sorry, we normally have a lot more viewers, but they're all from Twitter. So I guess today this is a little weird that I didn't realize. I think I knew it was coming and sort of had just forgotten about it. That they're closed off that
that feature on Twitter, which was nice for a while that you could stream.
Musk.
Or X. Well, yeah. So we'll have to have our Fist of the North Star duel with Elon Musk for a future episode of Why We Roll. All right. Well, this has been. Sorry, Luke. You should have the final word. It's Luke Gehring. We all love your work, Luke. Final words. Any thoughts? Any tips for game designers out there? Anyone who's reading your stuff and is curious?
Write for yourself. Fuck the audience. Also write for your best reader, but write for yourself. Like, don't worry about them. They'll sort themselves out. They want to hear what you have to say the way you want to say it. That's the big one. And also, turn the internet off, write for 1 hour every day. Wake up an hour early if you've got a day job. 1 hour in the morning, internet off. Do it. You can do it. It'll be fine.
Oh, yeah. Good.
I think that's fantastic.
Good practical advice. Love it.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well,
all right, Chris, take it away.
Thanks, everybody, again, for listening, for watching. This has been Why We Roll. I'm Chris Pickett. With me, as always, Wythe Marshall and Luke Gehring for today. All right. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks for listening to Why We Roll. Our theme music is by the brilliant Sam Tyndall and Arpline. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You can find us on Twitch and what used to be Twitter at Why We Roll, and on Instagram at whyweroll.pod.
You can find out more about Dance Macabre at timespaceplace.itch.io/dance-macabre.
You can find out more about Stillfleet at stillfleet.com. Thanks for listening.
Hey there, Hugh from Podderation here, and if you like today's show, why not have a listen to the All Things Nintendo podcast? Hosted by Brian Shea, former director and Game Informer and lifelong games journalist, the show explores the ins and outs of gaming's oldest company and one of its biggest, featuring interviews, featuring reviews, featuring everything you want to know about the world of Nintendo. If you'd like to learn more, check out our website at podderation.com.